And welcome back to the third instalment of my Nier Analysis. Click these cheeky links here to watch part 1 and 2 respectively. Apologies if the majority of this is story recapping, but I feel it's not only important for people who want to get into this series but maybe don't have the money to splash out on a 7th generation console, I also feel it's necessary in order to give context to a lot of the stuff I analyse. Besides, Nier Analysis and story recap just ain't catchy. So with that out of the way, it's time to rev up the engines once again.
Can you see my face?
Almost immediately after Emil digivolves into Skelemil via fusing with his sister Halua, he seems to have gotten over the initial shock about losing his body, the fatherly comfort or bishy boy charms emanating from both versions of Nier more than likely helping him through it. If you want to learn more about Halua, there's a short story called The Stone Flower, which is fully translated on the Nier wiki, which is just, oh no. To give you all a short summary, we'll be here till doomsday, it's a story about Halua and Emil's gradual transformation into weapons, the adults taking advantage of the children's naivety and Halua desperately trying to protect Emil's innocence. Recently, due to Taro's rather interesting way of concealing his identity, the new body that Emil's consciousness inhabits is more than definitely the poster child for the series as a whole. On a side note, it's strange watching multiple interviews of Taro and seeing the mouth glued shut, only to skip to the game and oh my god, I forgot it even had movement.
I sure hope seeing me doesn't petrify her. You know, in fear.
Shortly after this, we get to watch Emil's new magic in action as he releases Kaine from her stone prison.
The beast approaches.
But we dispose of him really easily, so yeah, just fuck off, Jack. When Emil is shouting to Kaine to wake up from her 5-year slumber, it's important to note she first believes his voice to be her grandmother's, as before she met with Nier and crew, she was the only person who would treasure Kaine being alive. But as she wakes up, she's met with 3 misfits who are now the 3 forces who also spurn her to continue living. It's also pretty sweet how Kaine recognises Emil straight away despite his new form, showing the two have a strong emotional connection.
Good to see you, Kaine.
You look like shit.
It's what we've all been saying.
But not long after Kaine is brought back, both Popola and Devola have a rather cruel but understandable request. The villagers are scared of Emil and Kaine and don't want them hanging around the village. It's not necessarily Popola and Devola's fault, but after the Shade attacks on the village, it'd be a little unusual for the villagers to be totally fine with letting a couple of strangers who look like a floating human corpse and a woman possessed by the very thing that helped kill friends and family members roam through the village prejudice-free. Both Emil and Kaine understand this, but Nier isn't having any of it. He realises that even 5 years ago, Kaine would sleep outside of the village, but he was too focused on helping Yona to notice. As the screen fades to black, we see a darker side to our protagonist than we've seen before, you know, minus all of this. He mentions wanting to grab and strangle Popola due to her decision, but he notes that they were only doing this for the sake of the village, and that anger won't solve anything. He actually apologises the day after for flying off the handle, but Popola aggressively defends his right to feel angry over his friend's treatment. This tiny little segment is easy to skim over, but it's pretty important, as one of the only few scenes where we get to read and understand exactly what's going on in our protagonist's head. After apologies are swapped, Popola gives us a huge breakthrough into the location of the Shadow Lord's current whereabouts. She tells us to take a boat and travel to the Lost Shrine through a secondary entrance due to the previous entrance now being blocked off. Apparently the location of the Shadow Lord is linked into this place, so this isn't exactly something Nier and crew can simply ignore. When we reach the main room where we originally met Weiss, we see that one of the Guardians, Gretel, is still alive and kicking. Something else to keep in the back of your mind is that when Gretel crashes through the ceiling, we hear it speaking in a language that we can't completely make out. Regardless of this, we take down the smaller shades surrounding it and take a shot at finishing the Guardian, but it's all psych and causes Kaine to just spill all of the jam. It's after this that we really finish Gretel off, and we rush over to check on Kaine. But oh no, the seal storing away the QB burst free from Naruto. Okay, I'm just gonna stop that one right there. The shade that possesses Kaine takes full control at this point as she's unable to hold it back. We engage in a reasonably challenging boss fight where she jumps around like a mad woman possessed, oh wait, and pummels your unprepared butthole with waves upon waves of magical bullets. Snapping Kaine out of her possession grants us a fantastic performance by Julianne Taylor, the voice actress of Emil.
If you transform again, we'll just stop it again, as many times as it takes. I don't care how tough it is, we're gonna get you back. I like sleeping outside because I'm with you, Kaine. I'm able to ignore my appearance and keep going because of you. I'm weak and sad and lonely, but Somehow you make me strong! You're my friend and I need you! So you can't go away!
Something else I want to quickly point out before I move on is how Nier has some really tight voice acting all in all. Liam O'Brien nails the character of Vice, though sometimes I can't shake the fact that his delivery strongly reminds me of one of O'Brien's previous characters.
You are not prepared! Stop pounding me!
We find a mysterious stone fragment at the very end of the room and bring it back to Popola, who claims it's part of a key to the Shadow Lord's castle. The part we obtained was named the Stone Guardian, referencing Gretel. There's the Law of Robotics, located at the Junk Keep, and the Memory Tree, referencing our old friend Sleeping Beauty. The other two, Sacrifice and Loyal Cerberus, are a mystery to Popola, but we'll obviously run into them during our story progression. We're given the option to visit either the Junk Keep or the Forest of Myth, which is nice. It's nice because in order to unlock the various endings, you'll need to repeat these segments, so it's good to mix things up even by a little bit. I decided to go for the Junk Keep first, and as soon as we enter, we're shown a flashback from 4 to 5 years ago of the two brothers, Jacob and Gideon. As Gideon rushes off to harvest a piece of scrap, a large robotic foot comes into frame, appearing to cause a large amount of debris to fall onto Jacob, crushing him. Gideon, distraught at this, rushes to help, but what we aren't shown in the shot is Gideon ripping his brother's arm off in a desperate attempt to free him. This is the true downfall of Gideon, and the beginning of his complete mental breakdown. During this traumatic event, he notices the robotic life form, and from that moment on, he blames everything that has happened to his family on machines. When we meet up with Gideon in the current day, we see he's missing an arm. This is down to the extreme guilt he felt after tearing off his brother's arm, so he began to damage his own, eventually having it completely replaced with a mechanical one. When we originally talk to him, he seems relatively normal. Nier asks him about the whereabouts of Shades, but Gideon is more interested in robots, allowing a little break in his seemingly normal persona. Gideon hands us a weapon, however it's not exactly in good condition. He sends us down to the basement level where we take out a few robots in order to receive some memory alloy to upgrade it. Part of me would like to think you didn't even need memory alloy to begin with, and Gideon was just sending you there to assist in his revenge. After this, well, we've got to be fucking patient. He can't fix it in an instant, not like it's a video game or anything. Whilst waiting for Gideon, I decided to let Nier go back and visit Popola, where she tells us we have some mail waiting for us, ever the helpful one. Turns out we have a royal summon from the King of Facade who's getting married. And before I jump into the wedding itself, I feel it's important to talk about something within the surrounding area facade that are pretty important, and I didn't go into much detail in part 2. The wolves. I brought up the fact that Freya was attacked by wolves, but I didn't go into detail about how they infest the desert area surrounding the city. They become a very well-known presence, and even on your first visit to Facade, we notice the leader of the pack appears to be a shade. Upon revisiting Facade, the interesting shade named Rock plays a much more interesting role. And speaking of important roles, we meet the king, where he introduces us to his new wife-to-be. Probably worth mentioning that the king is now aged 15 and his fiancée, Freya, is 10, and she's somehow taller than everyone in the room. What do you feed people in your city? Before the night of the wedding, we start talking to the party members about their opinions on the whole event, or their well-being in general. Kaine predictably doesn't want any of it, but Emil seems quite fond with the idea of marriage, even stating he'd be willing to if he met a girl who could accept him for who he is. He asks Nier about his wedding, but Nier shrugs it off, saying it was a long time ago and it isn't important. Emil notes that it's important to him. Oh boy, here we go. Emil is gay. Huh? Why? What? Woo! This is something a lot of people miss, and I can't blame them in the slightest, especially in the version the West got. Due to Nier and Gestalt previously being married, of course the dialogue is going to be different here. In Replicant, Emil discusses brother Nier's potential future marriage and what kind of person he wants to be his bride. Once the brother leaves the room, Emil says that he wants to be his bride. Now before I go any further, it's probably worth pointing out that no, Emil's sexuality doesn't really play a big part in the game itself. There's no big celebration or anything like that, it's just who Emil is. An interviewer asked Taro about the unusual sexual preferences in his games, but Taro responded with how he never intended for these characters to be unusual. It's just how you as a person view them in the real world. The line where Emil talks about finding a nice girl to marry is, well, it would obviously lead a lot of people to believe he's heterosexual, or at least bisexual, but nope. Even the interviewer asked if these feminine feelings were spurned on by his fusion with Halua, but Taro answered this rather quickly with, no, Emil is gay. Not meaning to spotlight my own sexuality here, but more so using it as an example. But I remember being 12 like Emil and not realising I was into more than one gender. I just thought the feelings I felt towards the same sex were natural or inconsequential and that I was completely heterosexual. But as I'm sure you can all see, as the years went on I gladly embraced my sexuality with open arms and legs. The same can be said for Emil, I'm sure. His feelings towards brother brother Nier being a crush and his feelings towards Papa Nier being more like a father figure, but that schoolboy crush still somewhat intact. Though that being said, since Emil has been around since the Queen Beast incident, this'll make him a 1,470-year-old with the brain and body of a 12-year-old, so I guess he's had a lot of time to think about which chest is best. And the wedding begins. Everything seems to be going along relatively smoothly, and the celebrations are in full blast. It's fairly sweet that a short story called A Little Princess focuses exclusively on Freya's adjustment to facade and her gradual relationship with the prince. Even after the prince saw her face, there was no prejudice. He liked her for who she was, and their relationship bloomed ever since. That is, until a wounded soldier interrupts the festivities, announcing that the wolves are coming. Freya's death signals the beginning of the king's complete need to wipe out all of the wolves. His advisor tries his best to get the king to act more like his title, but the king is still young, and not to forget, heartbroken. When Nier and co decide to join the young king in his quest for revenge, there's a sweet scene where the advisor and the soldiers pledge their loyalty to the king, the deceased queen, and his quest for revenge, as it's not just the king who wants revenge on the animals, but he still needed to get permission from the city first, as there are rules about this sort of thing after all. Nier helps the young king and his men take down the wolves in their den, and not long after, the king deals the finishing blow on the shade. The musical cue would lead us to believe this is a sad death, but for now, we're not exactly sure as to why. This grants us the next part of the key, the loyal Cerberus. The final scene for this particular segment has the party surrounding Queen Freya's grave, as the king talks about the people of the mask living and dying by their rules, but sometimes rules are there to be broken, which is something he told Freya many years ago. Moving on, Gideon has sent us a letter confirming the weapon has been completed. When we go visit him, he asks another favour of you.
I want you to avenge my brother, the ones in the mountain. That little shade and his robot.
There are shades here?
Kill him. Kill that robot.
Rip him up!
Locating the robot named P-33, from first glance it looks like it's being controlled by the shade perched on top of its head. Of course, Nier has no time to mess around and we slowly start to take it down. In its second form, it uses some form of magnetism to grant it flight, as it appears to be smashing the roof, causing debris to fall onto our heroes. Of course, we eventually defeat the machine, where we see Gideon's psyche truly break down.
You stupid machine! You killed my family! You took everything from me!
Hitting that thing won't bring your brother back.
But he's dead! And it's this bastard's fault! And hitting it makes me feel better! No one can stop me!
Also, we get the Law of Robotics kill! Next, I decided to bite the bullet and visit the Forest of Myth for the next part, but that being said, there's a lot of interesting things that present themselves to us if we're ready to sit down and read and not just open up an online guide. This time, we're going head on with Sleeping Beauty in the form of another text adventure yet again. And since I've already mentioned Sleeping Beauty being a sentient network computer, the introduction where it talks about gathering humanity's memories like dew and storing them deep in its roots make a lot of sense. We're then shown a trilogy, kinda, of short stories. The first one is about a boy with white chlorination syndrome, hinted at by the lines, "The boy's skin is a shade paler than the bleached hospital sheets upon which he lies." It also mentions the only joy in this boy's hospital life being a young girl that would visit him, however she eventually stops and he dies alone. The next story is very interesting and I'll be returning to it later. It's about a female warrior leading an attack on the Red Eyes. The story mentions she might have a daughter, but her drug-addled mind could possibly be making it up. The story ends with her laughing in the middle of a battlefield, staring up at a large beast that blots out the sky. The third one is about a red dragon who fell from the heavens, but Sleeping Beauty just happened to forget about that. In fact, Sleeping Beauty has been forgetting an awful lot, more than likely due to age. It feels like it's lost its purpose, the memories it once proudly stored being lost, never to be recalled. When Nier and Vice enter the room, they find a small shade which appears to be consuming memories in the shape of crystals. When Nier slices through the shade, crystals burst from its belly, which leads us to believe this little shade is what's causing Sleeping Beauty to lose its memory. However, it turns out that the little shade more than likely is the tree, possibly manifesting from being a sentient life form created from an otherworldly magic. Either that, or it's a shade that assimilated itself with Sleeping Beauty, becoming a physical shell for the ancient computer. When the shade, or Sleeping Beauty, touches Nier's arm, it reacts with overwhelming surprise and joy since its complete solitude for over 1,000 years. It begins to feel emotions it wasn't designed to feel, and it managed to feel this through Nier. Whether or not it's absorbing new emotions or simply creating them from nothing is up for debate. Apparently, Nier is the key to its release, something which was promised to it many years ago, more than likely talking about its termination. As Sleeping Beauty begins to feel pain, it realises time is running short. Whilst grabbing another part of the key, I love the detail put into this section. As the world of words begins to crumble, so does the text on the screen. The final question it poses for us is who is most important to us in the world, and after that, Sleeping Beauty is satisfied, presumably shutting down. The final part of the key is found in the Eyrie, where Popola was sent a letter by the village chief talking about opening a shop and marketplace within the village that allow many visitors from around the world to come and take a look, essentially opening its arms to strangers for the first time in years. Understandably, this comes off as a bit suspicious, even more so when...
You'll be destroyed! All of you! I'm scared. I don't trust anyone.
The marketplace itself isn't exactly strange, and they actually end up selling you things. This all changes, however, when a guard mentions knowing something about the letter, and when Nier tells him his goal is to eliminate every last shade. Many of the villagers are turning into shades and are attacking the party. In this cutscene, we see a supposed shade defending her brother. When Kaine takes her out, her real form is revealed and swiftly enacts her revenge. I feel like Kaine is doing this a lot. At one stage, we see what appears to be Bayonetta summoning an infernal demon, but it turns out to be a collection of the slain shades combining themselves into one grotesque mass, called Wendy. I mean, yeah, looks like a Wendy. Emil seems apprehensive about taking down the creature, as he implies it didn't only absorb shades, but it absorbed the villagers too, though this doesn't really matter to Nier and Weiss. During the fight, Emil succumbs to the will of his friends and fucking Expelliarmus the frick out of Wendy, and during his second attempt combined with Nier, they manage to kill the beast. But Emil's instincts as the ultimate weapon start to take over, causing him to essentially nuke the entire village, killing bystanders and leaving a crater where Kaine's village used to be.
I killed innocent people. I killed them all.
But you saved our lives.
Then it's all okay! Receiving the final part of the key, dubbed Sacrifice, get it? We can finally enter the Shadow Lord's castle, which is located in the exact same area we found Weiss and fought with Hansel and Gretel. Both Devola and Popola are here to see us off, as well as passing on gossip that the village is ablaze with the news that Nier is finally off to save Yona. Popola seems a little apprehensive to see her villager go off, but she lets us go regardless. Breaking the seal to the entrance, we're introduced to one of the nicer looking environments in the game. Definitely not the kind of final dungeon aesthetic I was usually used to whenever I played a JRPG. Now I'm sure a few of you are wondering where on earth this is. I mean, it clearly isn't anywhere near the Lost Shrine, because later into the dungeon we notice we're now in a city. I'm not sure if it's meant to be Tokyo or not. Taro answered this question in an interview, stating that behind the altar there's an elevator that brings you a long way underground, then there's a pathway that leads to the castle. Position-wise, it's located behind the mountains of a lost shrine. These two doves, presumably machines, pose the party a series of 3 questions. The answers are passwords to continue on. Why did humans disappear from the world? How can humans extend their lives, and what is the destination of souls? The answers to these, in order, are because of a black disease, by separating body from soul, and they are placed in their corresponding shells. This is a hint towards the direction the game is going in, the direction being a fucking rabbit hole.
It's the twins from your village.
Popola, Devola, what are you doing here?
Hey, any chance you'll just go back to the village?
And down the rabbit hole we go. Devola and Popola now stand in our way, but they make it absolutely clear that they didn't want to fight with us. When Weiss begins to question their motives, Popola snaps at him, claiming he's a traitor. Shortly after, the twins appear to drain Weiss of his powers, only to reveal that they didn't copy anything. More so, they're taking back what was loaned to him. After the battle stops, the twins drop a comment that proves they're closer to the Shadow Lord than what was originally thought. They take off, asking Nier to find his own truth about the situation, and in the next segment we're greeted to an unusual room with ghostly figures having what appears to be a gay old time. But it doesn't last all that long, as I'm sure you can guess. Kaine breaks down the next door, only to find something strange hidden behind it. one of the flying shades beckons to the orbs, fusing with them and turning into a ball for some strange reason. Reusing assets, maybe? Taking down ball number 1 introduces us to Mechaballzilla, aka Goose, who's a primary threat for most of our ascension into the castle. Goose is apparently unable to die, but this is only due to the fusion of many shades combined into one entity. When all hope seems lost, our friends from Facade apparently found our whereabouts. They open the next door and force us out, keeping Goose busy so we can save Yona. Finally, we're brought before the twins again, where the biggest twist of the game is unceremoniously dumped on our heads. Deviler and Popola aren't humans. Well, neither is Nier or Kaine. In fact, the only true human in the room is Emil, though now it's difficult to even call him one. The twins are a couple of androids who've been around since the beginning of humanity's downfall, otherwise known as observers. Androids would later appear in Drakengard 3 and have a primary focus of Nier Automata. These two specifically were created primarily to watch over replicants till their gestalts could rejoin them. What the fuck did you just say, Clemps? You having a stroke, my dude? Gestalts are the original name for shades. Shades are humans, or at least the souls of humans. Replicants are, well, what we originally thought were humans, so people like Nier, Kaine, the villagers, etc. Project Gestalt was a last resort by humanity to keep the race alive, by separating body and soul via touching mass-produced versions of Grimoire Noir. Replicants were originally meant to be shells that Gestalts could rejoin after the white chlorination epidemic was over. However, due to a rather big error in the system, replicants became self-aware, making it impossible for the Gestalts to fuse with them. This causes a majority of Gestalts to relapse and go berserk. However, it also affects the replicant, in the form of the Black Scrawl. But this isn't the case for many shades, as most completely retain their sanity. Something that a lot of people miss on their first playthrough is how the little shades that you first fight in the game near the village entrance don't attack you at all. They also drop school books. Nier has been slaughtering children. A very fair question to ask is, if Gestalts are mere souls of humans, why can they bleed? Taro answered this, saying that when Gestalts are attacked, their wounds temporarily return to their human state, which is why they can bleed and die just like a regular human. Something which blew me the fuck away during my research was how much thought went into the little details in this game, specifically the scroll. I'm just gonna transform into Professor Clemps here for a second. You'll remember I mentioned that the Black Scrawl appears to be some kind of text, right? Same applies to when you use magic. The symbols that we see are all part of a celestial alphabet. There are a series of 4 letters from this alphabet that link all of the Drakengard games and Nier together. They were found on the Seed of Destruction that Freya entered. Some of the seals in Drakengard 2 also have these letters, and finally the boss seals within Drakengard 3. What these stand for are A, C, G and T. Adenine, cytosine, guanine and thymine. All of these are found within DNA. The general consensus seems to be that the Black Scrawl is meant to show how the DNA synchronization between Replicant and Gestalt has well and truly messed up. Moving back to Project Gestalt, the fusion between Replicant and Gestalt was meant to be performed with a fusion of Grimoire Vice and Grimoire Noir, hence the line "set free shades to the world." However, due to Vice's memory loss, he's seen as a traitor by Deviler and Popola, by not allowing humanity to return to their new bodies. In fact, what's interesting to note here is how Vice was originally human himself. In the short story And Then There Were None, it's read in the perspective of Vice as a young man being put into a room with various strangers in a kill or be killed situation, each with a strange blank book by their sides. All of the people within this room are or were previously children soldiers working for the Hamelin organization. It's also important to note that the Hamelin organization later went on to create Project Gestalt. These children soldiers were given the very first anti-white chlorination syndrome drug named luciferase, as it was more effective with younger patients. The Hamelin organization would proceed to send these children out to vanquish the legions as they could no longer be infected. Within the room is a young woman who he became acquainted with on the battlefield due to saving her from being frozen with fear in front of legions. Vice grew attached to this girl. Later on in this room with no clear exits, a fight breaks out between a man and a woman. The woman slaps the man and the man goes to strike her. However, a black hand reaches out from the book beside the woman and crushes the man. The book that belongs to the man sucks up his corpse, the cover turning aquamarine in colour and a strange face materialising on the front. As voices fill the room, presumably from scientists telling him that only 2 can remain, a bloody battle breaks out. The man we know to be Vice works together with the girl, but she protects him from a vital blow, being impaled by a black spike. As her body was being sucked into her book, he desperately clung onto her hand, begging her not to disappear, but it wasn't enough. Her book turned blood red, the face on the front not resembling hers at all. What's tragic about this is all these years later, Vice couldn't remember the book of the woman he begged not to disappear, even when they were face to face. The man that murdered the girl would eventually be Grimoire Noir. Him and Vice were the last two men standing, however the voices never once said that the remaining two would leave. The men we know to be Vice and Noir are sucked into their books, and as he learns of his new name, Grimoire Vice, he couldn't stop laughing. Moving back to the final confrontation with the android twins, they want Nier's shell to return back to its rightful owner. I'm sure a lot of you can assume who Nier's body was originally meant to be for. They engage us in battle, and we manage to mortally wound Devila. The scene where Devila tells Popola she loves her as her final words is not only heart-wrenching, but also another memorable scene that stuck with me long after my first playthrough.
Popola. Let's stop this now.
Stop. Stop. You want me to stop? You think I have the luxury to stop? You cut down my sister like an animal, and you tell me to stop?
Popola, wait! It doesn't have to—
No one stops! It's way too late to stop! No one stops!
Popola completely breaks down, initiating a massive magical attack that Emil protects the party from. Popola retaliates, but Emil, not wanting to see his friends die, decides to sacrifice himself. He bids farewell to his friends, saying that once he hated his eyes, and now he hates his body, but now he feels there's something else there instead of hatred. Pride.
I'm scared. I don't want to. Don't I?
Popola and Emil are gone, and the next scene where Kaine and Nier are silently grieving over Emil's departure is by far my favourite scene in the game, as it shows Taro and Notori have a deep understanding of the character. Nier is crying, Kaine seems defeated. Not long after, she begins to beat up Nier, pinning him to the wall. The 5 seconds we get here is the indication we get towards Kaine's feeling towards him, as they have now evolved into romantic ones. Kaine has never been able to express her emotions well, a lot of the time she comes off as violent. This physical outburst is a way for Kaine to express her emotions. Even Taro in his interview stated this is the most romantic part of the game. It's a fucking perfect way for us to understand how Kaine's thought process works, and further grounds her as one of my favourite characters. Finally though, the long adventure comes to a close. Nier comes face to face with the Shadow Lord, and Yona is now in clear sight. The Shadow Lord is Nier. This Nier. His entire goal was to get the replicant of Yona in order to fuse her gestalt with it, despite the fact that her gestalt was relapsing, causing the scroll to appear on the replicant. The Shadow Lord was the very first gestalt to ever keep his sanity after touching Grimoire Noir. Before this, the Hamelin organization would hand out copies of Noir to survivors, watching them turn into relapsed gestalts. With the first sentient gestalt, it was possible to create further stabilized gestalts, giving humanity another chance to survive. Yona's gestalt was put on ice as a thank you for helping the project succeed, promising him that her relapsing would be cured. But, after thousands of years, this was obviously a false promise, and the Shadow Lord decided to take matters into his own hands. What he didn't take into account, however, was that his replicant would share his same burning desire to rescue his daughter. After beating the Shadow Lord, Nier gets to see his daughter for the first time in 5 years. But...
Dad.
Yona.
Yona's gestalt talks to the Shadow Lord, telling him that she doesn't want someone else's body, and that there's another soul in there with her wanting to see Replicant Nier, implying that if Gestalt and Replicant were to combine now, there would be more than one soul, as Replicants are now sentient. Gestalt Yona tells her father she loves him, as she releases her soul from the Replicant, dissolving into the sunlight. The Shadow Lord is understandably not best pleased.
Oh, bother. One moment, please.
You okay?
I'm just fine. Alright, no, I'm not.
As much as it pains me to admit, it's time to say goodbye to our good friend Grimoire Vice. Being pushed past his limit, he decides to give Nier one final chance to finish the Shadow Lord off, before sacrificing himself for the greater good. He mentions forgetting about the proper pronunciation of his name, as he's now grown rather fond of Vice. After avoiding this hellish bullet hell segment, there's a moment where we see Nier having doubts about what he's about to do. He pauses, shakes his head, reaffirming to himself that what he's doing is right, and ends the Shadow Lord or the original Nier's life.
Oh God, no.
Oh, please, the girl is fine.
Vice returns to us for a moment as a disembodied voice, though it won't be long before that goes too. He tells Nier to recall his memories of spending time with Yona to bring her back, and after typing in who she loves more than anyone, she wakes up. The reunion is sweet, but Kaine begins to leave. Nier offers for her to stay with them, but Kaine insists she has other shit to take care of. As Nier goes after her, Yona stops him by asking him to look outside with her. This is a scene created by Notori, and Taro was quoted saying it was an amazingly twisted scene, as he wanted a beautiful moment where they look out onto the sky, but Yona chimed in at the worst possible time when Kaine was taking her exit. I mean, Yona's kind of a little shit. It's like, no, he's mine! But I suppose Yona still has the mentality of a 5-year-old girl, so it kind of makes sense. You'd also think this is supposed to be a happy ending, right? Well, guess again. By killing the Shadow Lord, it means that all of the stable Gestalts will relapse, causing a widespread outbreak of the Black Scrawl, meaning the end of all replicants and Gestalts as we know it.
Quite the silly sausage, aren't you?
After this, we get Ending A. In a flashback, Gollum and Walking Disease know how it's pretty sunny today, and the Shadow Lord and Yona meet together in what appears to be an afterlife. Wow, is that it? Oh, that's it. I mean, I guess it's only the first ending. Surely they get better after this, right? Spoilers. They fucking do. Oh. After ending A, Nier was lifted pretty high into my favourite games list. You start off the game after Emil rescues Kaine from petrification. There are a number of things new to this segment, but for now I'm going to revisit a story that Sleeping Beauty told us in the Forest of Myth. And since this part of the game is focusing around Kaine, I feel it's a good time to drop it. This is a complete theory on my half, but I feel it makes a lot of sense. Hopefully much better than Kaine being Red Eye. The story about the female warrior fending off the Red Eyes, forgetting about her daughter? I personally believe that this story is referencing Kali, Kaine's grandmother. Now the Kaine and Kali we know are replicants, however, as with every replicant, they must have had a human counterpart at some stage. In the drama CD, Kali is one of the main characters for a little while, being a PTSD-suffering warrior who gained a reputation due to being the woman who fought off a huge majority of the legions. This story irks me a little, like how all of the characters in their human form somehow bump into each other like the world's biggest coincidence, but this is something I can give a pass to. Another thing, before I move on, is how Kaine was told since she was a little girl that her parents had passed away. This is false, as she's actually a program baby created from Kali, Kali's husband, and a combined analysis of Legion's attack patterns. My guess is Kali adopted this girl, having forgotten her other daughter. At one stage during the drama CD, a bloody incident with a Red Eye causes Kaine to go into her offensive form, ripping the Red Eye open. Another hugely important part of this story is the introduction of a man named Masayoshi Yura, someone who forcibly took over the Hamlin organization. The man was sadistic and prone to fits of anger where he'd beat up or in worse cases kill whoever it was who disobeyed him. He was also noted to be especially harsh to Emil, who was obviously alive back then and was part of a Hamlin organization in the form of a weapon. During an incident where a Red Eye was located around Kali's mansion, Yura ordered his men to kill the beast, but no surprise, they couldn't. He then forcibly gives Emil a drug which accidentally causes him to go out of control, making Yura flee from the battlefield, becoming a fugitive. Yura changed his name to Tyran and successfully turned into a Gestalt. However, the government discovered his replicant and destroyed it, meaning Tyran will forever be without his original body, causing him to take control of other people's replicants. One of the replicants he half-possessed was Kaine after the death of Kali at the hands of Hook. This gives off a little bit of insight as to why Kaine is such a violent, hate-filled individual, as she has to be filled with dark emotions or Tyran will take over at any sign of emotional fragility. By the way, I'd like to add that Tyran is pretty much the Leonard's fairy of Nier.
It's home to so many terrible little memories, isn't it, Kaine?
I can't fucking stand this edgy motherfucker. After ending A, you can sometimes hear Tyran talking to Kaine, often mocking her or the things she's killing. Tyran's inclusion to this game is necessary and appreciated, however that doesn't mean I have to like him. He acts like a 13-year-old discovering Gaia Online's roleplay forums, and that just ain't fun to listen to. Another thing that the game flips on its head during the hunt for ending B is the perspective. We've seen the story primarily from Nier's eyes and his frantic one-minded goal to rescue his daughter. Now we get to see the story from the Shade's point of view, which ultimately paints Nier as an unfortunate villain. We get to see the story of Gretel after Hansel's death, getting to know the incomplete Gestalt children and understanding them as equals. We even get to see what Gretel was saying as it encountered us for the second time. But sadly, we know that Nier kills the children and Gretel not being able to protect them and itself. The wolves in Facade even have a more fleshed out story. The wolves' shade leader, Rock, is bitter about humanity over replicants turning what used to be a forest into a harsh, desolate landscape via unknown means. The Shade seems to believe that replicants in Facade can live besides others, but after soldiers from Facade wiped out a majority of the pack, including youngsters, it causes the Shade to launch a furious counterattack, something we know doesn't end happily for anyone. When the king plunges his spear into the Shade questions what they've done to deserve such a fate. In its final moments, it sees its owner, who he affectionately refers to as his father. The owner must have prioritized his pet's life over his own, thus making the animal into a gestalt before himself. He asks the creature to think of him now and again, and it's clear from the name, Loyal Cerberus, it still does.
You want a dog? But you'll do.
The Ares story isn't really expanded, however, knowing about the Shade's real identity gives us a little more insight into the Ares' xenophobia. A few theories have been flying around about how the Ares might be the only place Nier visits where the population know about the Shade's real identity. If this theory is true, the villagers obviously split with this news, some of them shunning the idea and others gladly accepting it. Some may willingly be giving up their bodies for the gestalts to enter, or are trying to coexist with them. The final segment we get is probably the most important as far as short stories go. I'm talking about the story of P33. The story starts off with a gestalt mother and her child named Khalil being chased into the junk heap by replicants. The mother decides to protect her child, but presumably dies, leaving the child alone. P33 is hostile to begin with, but later warms to the child, showing something similar to empathy, which eventually blossoms into friendship, gaining the nickname BP. Fast forwarding, we see Jacob and Gideon collecting scrap. Gideon rushes off ahead of his brother, the siblings' loud voices and heavy footing dislodging part of the ceiling, causing Jacob's death. BP and Khalil were in the wrong place at the wrong time, Khalil even stating that Jacob's death was terrible and that the two boys seemed nice. Unfortunately, they become the main driving force for Gideon's maniacal revenge against robots. During the final confrontation with BP and Khalil, the moment where BP was smashing the ceiling wasn't to crush us with debris, but to get Khalil out to safety to see the outside world, which they promised each other they would go explore as friends. Khalil passes away before BP, saying how he wishes they were together forever. BP is second to go, but not before dropping us with another painful guilt trip.
BP alone. BP. Cry.
But turn those frowns upside down, because in a novella from the Drakengard 10th anniversary box, it tells us that BP made it out from the junk heap alive, having lost most of his memory but remembering the words from him, begging him to go and see the outside world. Along his journey, he finds other robots and persuades them to join him on his hunt for the outside world. Eventually, BP and the other robots have become a single assimilated sphere, no longer resembling a human form. The entity formerly known as P33 escapes the junk heap and sees an unusual sight. Machines, which the BP hive mind note as being an alien race, are fighting a group of what appear to be humans. They aren't human, however, and are based primarily of female-looking soldiers. These are androids. The BP hive mind hack a simple command into every machine unit: let us live. After a while, the fighting ceases. A feeling of brotherhood and solidarity replaces the fighting. The BP hive mind lets out a cry of joy as they exit the stratosphere and see the stars. They finalize it with a song. We are headed even further into the outside world, just as we promised you. We are alive just as you were. We are singing, singing, singing. Will our song reach you? Will our feelings reach you, wherever you are? Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh yeah, ending B. I kinda got a little bit sidetracked there. There are a few things here that are different about the Shadow Lord's castle. The first being these mysterious shade orbs that Nier cuts down with no second thoughts. These are fucking gestalt babies. Jesus Christ. Secondly, we get to see the demise of the King of Facade. This is something that's left up in the air in ending A, but this just stamps on your hopes like a flaming bag filled of shit. The ending itself isn't really anything special. It's just a little extended version of the moment with the Shadow Lord and Yona in the afterlife, kinda cementing the original Nier's ending in stone a little better than ending A. Oh yeah, and one more thing. As many of you are aware, especially been keeping up to date with Automata news, is that Emil made it out okay, albeit a little handicapped. It's worth noting that despite Emil making an appearance as one of the side characters in Automata, he's now well over 15,000 years old in the game's timeline. Before this, he even has a fight with some aliens. The novella isn't overly important, so I can sum it up in this quick segment.
Hey, you alright, fam? Look at this fucking ball-ass twat. Fuck you. What you doing? Fuck off. Oh, fucking hell, he's packing heat. I'm out, mate. Fuck off, cunt.
Finally, we can touch on endings C and D. Both are thankfully connected to each other, as they both revolve around Kaine. Ending C starts us off from Kaine's departure from Nier and Yona. Tyran begins to go on an edgy baby boy rant about how killing was totally fucking rad. However, he quickly changes his mind, claiming that it now feels empty. In fact, there's a line he says in a previous room that hints towards his changing nature that just makes my skin crawl.
Hey, sunshine. There's something kinda weird happening in your heart. The hate is gone. The sadness is gone. It's just a bunch of white light now.
Tyran is about to relapse. If he relapses, so will Kaine, causing them both to go berserk. Kaine asks one final request from Nier.
I want you to kill me.
During the battle, Tyran makes his first vocal appearance to Nier. He states that when the time is right, he'll pin Kaine down so Nier can save her. It'd appear that even Tyran, formerly known as Yura, has also had a change of heart. And when the time does come, Nier is presented with two choices. Kill Kaine and end her suffering, or make her human again, destroying Tyran and completely wiping Nier from existence. If you choose to kill Kaine, she dissolves into nothingness. Tyran speaks to Nier in the same manner that Vice did, telling Nier that as a being who has been tormenting Kaine for years, if he tells him that she's free now, he wants Nier to believe him. He also delivers a final message from Kaine.
Thank you.
If you choose to sacrifice yourself in exchange for Kaine's life, well, everything is wiped. Yep, you heard me. Your weapons are wiped, your items are wiped, your save file is wiped. Nier is completely and utterly removed from existence, not even a memory remaining. That is, unless you're a cheeky cunt like me.
Hey, I just ID'd your body, and he's cute. No way. I'm getting hacked.
Oh, pork skin?
No, this is major. They've already burned through the
PSN.
public firewall.
Kaine wakes up and is greeted by Yona. Yona asks if she was the one who saved her as Kaine looks around an empty room. After touching Yona, she has a brief flash of a man she doesn't know, a memory she shouldn't have. She begins to cry as she says it's almost as if she's found something very special. As a way to finish this Goliath of a project, I thought I'd run over Ending E, an ending which was exclusive to a novella. Even before Ending E, there's a segment in the drama CD where after the events of the Shadow Lord, Kaine gets attached to a villager who showed affection to her, but he's killed in a shade ambush. Kaine storms into his house where the little sister is mourning over his body. The sound of ripping clothes can be heard and loud banging. Now, one of the more common theories, also keeping in mind how the sister is completely freaked out by this, is how Kaine is fucking the corpse. Moving on to Ending E. In this ending, Kaine reaches the Forest of Myth, hunting for more shades to kill as a way for her to vent her frustrations about feeling like she's lost something precious. However, a lot has changed since our last visit. Power cables have now completely covered the ground floor like tree roots, a strange green sap or oil accompanying them. When Kaine reaches the most strange looking tree in the forest, the vines materialize in the form of a young man. Kaine cuts off the head of this man, but the vines simply materialize again. The form states its name, which is lost in translation, but it states that the forest is now entering its final transition, the complete reset of the Replicant and Gestalt program. The entity who I assume to be Sleeping Beauty's final form sends a wave of non-sentient P-33s after Kaine, eventually throwing out a copy of Kaine herself to fight, which is rumoured to be an android. Not long after, Emil coincidentally finds Kaine, now sporting a makeshift body. The two team up together, and in a final blast they take down the enemy's core. The young man, or Sleeping Beauty, compliments how far replicants have come before it dissolves into a giant puddle along with the forest. Emil protects Kaine from the storm of power cables that are now flying wildly out of the forest's demise, but Kaine eventually reaches an area of blinding light that she thinks is the border between reality and a dream world. She feels something familiar to her in this light and tries to grab it. Whatever it is tells her to stop, but she refuses, exclaiming that she must get this back no matter what the consequences. She feels an invisible force pushing her forward, telling her, "I'll leave this guy to you, lingerie woman." I can't say exactly who this is, but I know exactly who I want it to be. She returns to reality, the forest of myth being replaced by a techno-organic flower resembling a lunar tear. In the centre is Kaine, holding a young boy in her arms as a mill floats towards them. The trio have finally been reunited after 3 long years. I legitimately hope I helped some of you understand many of the details that the main game left out, and maybe agree or disagree with many of the points I made about Taro's writing or the game in general. I think the biggest compliment to me will be knowing how many people actually went out and bought the game or previous titles, becoming fans of this bizarre series themselves. As to whether or not I think you should play the game, I'm going to say you absolutely should. If you don't own a console that plays it, then that's understandable, but I think experiencing the game for yourself will make you feel a much stronger connection to it rather than looking at it through my videos. Apparently if Automata sells like hotcakes, then there's a chance that Nier might get remastered, so you know what to do. The game itself is bland at points, frustrating at points, and overall a title that's very love and hate in its presentation. The fact that the story is fragmented over different games, short stories and drama CDs is a little bit aggravating, but at the same time I fully respect the choice to expand the universe beyond the main game itself. Despite all of this, the game is still fucking good. What it doesn't deliver completely in gameplay, it delivers fantastically in its storytelling. As to whether I'm going to look at Nier Automata, of course I am. As soon as I have enough research into what Automata is presenting us with, then I'll hopefully do an analysis. This obviously won't be any time soon, but I hope you look forward to it regardless. Thank you for joining me on this mammoth of a project. The best thing you can do for me is to share the video around with as many people as you can, and subscribing and clicking the bell would be an obvious help. I've got many more projects lined up, and I hope you're all as excited about Nier Automata as I am. See you all next time. Mwah!